Ciao, paesani, and greetings from the Cucina Quarantena. I'm Viola from the Italian-American podcast, and it's Sunday, a day that we've traditionally been making meatballs and sausage and gravy or sauce, whatever you want to call it. But obviously right now, meat is a little bit of a premium, so I'm gonna harken back to a recipe that is part my family recipe from my nonna's cookbook, and part a recipe that I've picked up on my travels to Italy. So we're gonna make meatless meatballs, Polpette di Pane, a bread meatball that's really popular in a lot of regions of Italy. I've had them in Padula, I've had them in Puglia, I've had them in Molise, but believe it or not, this is also a recipe that my nonna uses and now my family all uses for our Thanksgiving Day stuffing. So I'm gonna make her a stuffing recipe, which is the same as these bread meatballs, and then I'm gonna put them into meatballs and fry them in the pan and take you along with me as I make a quarantine version of Sunday sauce. So hope you enjoy, and let's see how this turns out. So we're just gonna start by cubing our bread. We've been making bread in the house, so this one is one that we just made yesterday, but didn't really rise as much as we'd like. This is the end of some of the bread that we've had, also kind of a victim of a little bit too little time in the proof. But what we're gonna do is just open these things up and dig out the center part here, and we're gonna cube that up. And we're gonna save ourselves all of the crust because we're gonna be able to use that for breadcrumbs in the house. So now is not the time to be wasteful, and breadcrumbs like this that are homemade are really great. So I'm just gonna start to dig out as much as I can out of the crust of the inside of the bread, and that's gonna go into my mixing bowl. So even though for me this is kind of a family holiday recipe that we're amending, it's all the same ingredients and process as one of the most famous recipes from the Italian Cucina Povera, the kitchen of the poor. This is something that families would have used either if they had old dried bread that had to be reconstituted, or in most cases where they couldn't really afford to have meat, this was a great alternative. And now in many places this has come to be appreciated for the delicious meal that it is in and of itself. And as you can see, I've got this bread, it's all kind of fresh and spongy. In reality, the recipe really calls for you to kind of leave it out overnight if you can. So if you can do this the day before, it's gonna be a lot better. But for me, I'm gonna get this done now because it's Sunday and my family's hungry. And I'm just ripping the bread apart into little pieces so that it's nice and small, gets good surface area to get covered, but I don't want it too bunched together. And now I'm gonna cover it up with a little bit of fresh milk. I'm gonna start with a half a cup. Maybe I'll do a full cup so that it really gets mixed together nice and soaked in there. Then I'm just gonna whisk together 6 eggs. And right into that mixture, just so I spread it all around, I'm gonna put my salt and pepper to taste. Then I'm just gonna add my finely chopped parsley. Now get in there with your hands and get it nice and mixed up and really squish it around so that everything combines, and make sure it's nice and soft. Make sure it's all covered, all mixed together. Kind of squeeze it through your fingers. Try to get all the ingredients to mix into one kind of paste. And then I'm gonna put my mozzarella in, and I'm gonna do the same thing with that. I'm just gonna grate in some of this parmigiano reggiano that I have. I've already put some in, but just to show you, I'm grating it right in here. And you can use any kind of dried hard cheese that you have. We had this in the house, but the recipe also traditionally calls for pecorino romano or another hardened cheese that you can grate. And then just mix it all up so that everything blends together. So once I got that all mixed up, I'm just gonna form them into balls, like I would a normal meatball. And then I'm just gonna bake them a little bit, just in a 375-degree oven, probably 15 minutes, just to get them nice and firm before I fry them. And then I'm just gonna prep my olive oil. So in a frying pan on really low heat, I'm gonna infuse the olive oil with a little bit of garlic. So just a few cloves of garlic, gently crushed on the back end of my knife, just so they break up. And on very, very low heat, I'm gonna let them brown in there, and then I'm gonna take them out. That's what my great uncle Dominic does with it. And I think it leaves the oil tasting really nice and really delicate, not overpowered by the garlic. And then once I got my bread balls out of the oven, They're going right into the hot oil, and I'm just gonna cook them like I would a normal meatball. Just brown them on all sides. And as you can see, I'm experimenting here, so the consistency is a little bit softer than I thought it would be. So as you're frying these things, you may want to turn up the heat on your oil because the oil is cooling as the heat moves its way into the bread balls. So just make sure you kind of fiddle with it, but it should kind of look like a crab cake. And if you want, you can do what I'm going to do, and once they're out and have a nice crust, throw them back in the oven at 375 for a little bit, just so that they get even better baked. And here we have our Polpette di Pane, our bread meatballs. These things did come out a little bit more squished than I intended them to, although I have seen some kinds of Sicilian meatballs that are actually made like that on purpose, but I think it's clear to say you gotta let the bread dry out for a little bit longer than I did. Maybe overnight, just let it get a little bit harder. It might hold up a little bit better under the heat. But I've got a little bit of sauce that I made based off of my normal Sunday sauce, and I'm just gonna give it a taste. That's pretty good. It's got a beautiful crisp texture. It's got a lot of the same flavors as you would get in a normal meatball. It reminds me of my nonna's stuffing, which I love, and like the Polpette di Pane that I've had in Italy. So if you're like us and you're trying to conserve the meat that you have in your house around this time, or if you've got a loved one who doesn't eat meat, there's a great substitute. So from all of us at the Italian American Podcast, thanks for watching, stay home, stay safe, and we'll see you next time. Buona domenica.